And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today we're looking at if the Washington Commanders should trade for Tyreek Hill. And so we're going to be looking at the positives and the negatives for trading for Tyreek Hill. And so you can find this article on Bleacher Report. And in this article, they're looking at 7 different trades for some different teams. And the 4th trade that came up was the Washington Commanders trading for Tyreek Hill. And so this is the mock trade that is proposed here. And so the Miami Dolphins would get a 2025 second-round pick, a 2025 fifth-round pick, and a 2026 third-round pick. In exchange, the Washington Commanders would get Tyreek Hill. They would get a 2025 7th-round pick. They also would get a 2026 5th-round pick. And so with that being said, let's start with the positives out of this if the Washington Commanders were to do this. And so starting with the draft capital, I think that you're not giving up a whole bunch of draft capital. I think that this is something that Adam Peters would very much entertain because he's talked about building in the draft, and you're not giving up a whole bunch to get, a former Super Bowl champion and, a Pro Bowler here in Tyreek Hill. And so I think that that is point number one as a positive. The Washington Commanders would still have the ability to build in the draft, and you still would get a player, or you do get a player that would immediately help you. And so that leads me to the second point as to why it would be a positive, because Tyreek Hill is still an elite player, okay? Because I know it was a down year for Tyreek Hill because they didn't have their starting quarterback for most of the year. But even in a down year, he still had 81 receptions. He still had 959 yards, and he still had an average of 11.8, and he had 6 touchdowns. And even in a down year right now, he would have been the second best wide receiver on the Washington Commanders, and he would have done that by a lot, because the second leading receiver was Zach Ertz, who had 654 yards. And so, yes, that is a positive because it is an upgrade to the wide receiver room. And I love the fact that if you were to get Tyreek Hill, you get the experience of him being in the Super Bowl. I think that that definitely is something that, the Washington Commanders have done a good job with, is really building the foundation of the team. They've gotten players and coaches in here who have done it at a high level, and so you would get that. And then just with what he can do from a skill set standpoint at the wide receiver position, there's so much that you could do with Tyreek Hill. You could definitely take him, run him long. He's going to take the top off of the defense. We know that even if he catches, a 5-6 yard pass, he can really take that to the house still. He still has that speed. I think he would be excellent in the screen game. That is something that we know that Cliff Kingsbury loves to run here with this offense. You could see how dynamic that would be. You also get a chance to really utilize him in the run game. I could see the Washington Commanders throwing out the jet sweeps and stuff like that. And so certainly that would help. You know that his presence on the field would also open it up for Terry McLaurin. So I think between the two defenses would just have a fit trying to figure out how to stop that duo. And then you add the fact that with Jaden Daniels, how dynamic he is as a runner and how he's able to buy time. I mean, that is just a nightmare for defenses. And so it is a win-win situation there if you get him over and he's healthy, which he has shown that. Looking at the games that he has played, he played in 17 in 2024, 16 in 23, 17 in 22 and 21. So he's been very durable. He doesn't miss games. And so that is a great thing as well. Another positive, you're getting a player that is going to be out there. Now, with that being said, for all the positives and the fact that he would certainly help this team in an area that we need to get better at, he definitely immediately helps us in this championship window and helps us really utilize this window that we have with Jaden Daniels on this rookie contract. There are some negatives here. And so let's start with some of these negatives. And so going back to his exit at the end of this year when he was talking about, it seems like being frustrated when he was like, look, it's my first time. I haven't been in the playoffs. And he was talking about opening the door to leave. But since then, he has come back and said that he's taken accountability, essentially apologized to the Dolphins, and he said that he wants to be there. And so that's point number one. All right. So it sounds like that Tyreek Hill is wanting to stay with the Dolphins and really kind of close that door. All right. And so number two, I think the next negative about this is that he has stated that he would like to retire after his contract ends. And so looking at his contract, he signed a 3-year, $90 million deal, and he has a backloaded contract. And so he's going to make $28 million this upcoming season, and then he's going to make $51 million on his last year. And so with that being said, we talked about Terry McLaurin, and Terry McLaurin is coming up on a contract. This is the last season of his contract. And so I think most certainly the Washington Commanders are going to extend Terry McLaurin. He's set to make, I think, $25 million here in his 2025. And so with that being said, you have to think about that. So he's going to make a lot of money. And I'm talking about Tyreek Hill. And you're going to have to go into an extension with Terry McLaurin. I think that that's something that the Commanders would have to think about. And I think that this is a team that has shown before or thus far that they are not willing to go off and just spend and just put the team in a place where they're set back. I think that when you look at Adam Peters, he's been very smart with the way that he's kind of worked the front office thus far and the acquisitions and things like that, even though they're going to be aggressive in the offseason and they're going to be aggressive when it comes to trading. I don't think that they're going to get in situations where, they get into the questionable stuff with contracts and just tying up a whole bunch of money into certain players. And so I think that that is something that could be a negative right there, is the contract situation. And then lastly, how serious is he about not playing after the contract is over? Like, I think that that's one of the things where you have to think to yourself, okay, if you're only going to get him for a season or two, is that enough to really truthfully get to where you want to go to? Would it be more beneficial for you to go into the draft Matthew Golden out of Texas, who I think is going to be a player that can definitely make some house calls as far as being a home run hitter. I've talked about this with Buford Burton. I think that he's a player maybe that's a lot like a Zay Flowers. Like, I think that these players could be exceptional for you. And I know it's like you have, a great player right now, but maybe you take a player where it takes them just a little bit of time to develop, but then they become a star player by the time maybe that Tyreek Hill is ready to retire, and that would cost you far less. And so anyway, let me know in the comments here what you're thinking. Do you think the Washington Commanders should entertain going after Tyreek Hill if he were to become available? Because here's the scenario as well. What if the Miami Dolphins get off to a bad start and he just demands a trade? Like, what happens then? I mean, maybe there's a situation where the Dolphins are open to moving him. It would be maybe at the start of the season or something like that. Maybe you do get him maybe a little bit more discounted as far as the draft picks and things like that. So maybe that's something that could happen. So do you think that the Washington Commanders should entertain it? Or are you on the side of no because of the contract and because of the uncertainty of the future with Tyreek Hill and the possibility of him retiring? Do you just go now into the NFL draft and get a wide receiver and go from there? And so I'd love to hear your thoughts. And as I always say, go Commanders, and I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.